So I am currently nursing a injured rib, which is not what this video is about. I don't think too many guys are worried about their ribs, unless it's like Adam and they think that they're gonna pull the woman out of his rib and glee-biddy-glah, but I'm not gonna get biblical on this channel. Anyways, made me start thinking about like other injuries that I had while I can't skate right now. And I thought maybe I'd tell the story of the time that I got the injury that I think most people with testicles fear, and that's damaging your genitals in a very, very severe way. And I have in fact done it in a way that probably trumps the way that you're probably imagining. You're probably imagining me jumping on a handrail and doing a sack, which is what people in the biz call it, where it's a leg on each side of the rail and you hit it and that sucks real bad and like sometimes you puke or whatever. No, what I had was way worse than that. In fact, what I had was so bad that I might actually still be suffering from the consequences of that injury. Doctor's appointments will tell soon. If you don't know, I get chronic kidney stones and bladder stones, and this might actually be the culprit that led to it because of scar tissue, but still doing tests, still trying to figure it out. So anywho, here's the story in very, very graphic detail. And I assure you, it's quite a doozy. And if, you don't have the same genitalia as me, totally fine from what I understand, getting kicked in the vagina, where I imagine anything that you have that is like in the private area is extremely sensitive. So I'm sure you can relate to this one. It's gonna get a little hectic, so hang in there. So I was skateboarding when this injury happened, and I was skateboarding a handrail when this injury happened, but I did not sack the rail. What ended up happening was it was a double set rail, which in skateboarding, that means that there's a set of stairs and then a flat and then another set of stairs. And I tried to skate the rail and I jumped off my board and I landed on the board between my legs. I'm not a very tall person, so my feet didn't hit the ground right away. And I bounced off the ground, I fell on my face, and adrenaline kicked in. And I was laughing because it was such a ridiculous fall. I'm not feeling the pain yet. I'm still kind of in shock. I'm still sort of seeing white. And then all of a sudden when I stood up, I was wearing baggy black jeans and I felt like I was pissing myself. I was like, whoa, that's scary. Am I actually peeing myself right now? Did I pop something? And I pulled my pant leg up just a little bit and my sock was just drenched in blood. It was just like dark blood. So as you can imagine, I'm panicking. I want to know what's going on. I got my buddy Knuckles there and I'm like, hey man, you got to see what's going on down there. I can't see, there's too much blood. I can't look, I can't get a good angle. I wasn't sure what I hurt. And so I take him into the bathroom with me. And I pull down my pants and I bent over because as far as I knew, it was I thought I ripped my asshole. I wasn't, everything down there was just hurting, but most of the pain felt like it was coming from my butthole. You'll see what happened later. So I pull down my pants, he's looking, I think I parted my cheeks for him, and he's just dude, I can't tell what's going on. There's just way too much blood. I can't see anything. So I'm sick, whatever. So we go to the hospital. As you can imagine, the ride to the hospital, I have my pants around my knees and my ass is in the air and I'm bleeding all over the place. I'm trying not to get blood on my friend's seat, but I totally am. I'm feeling like I'm gonna pass out because I'm losing a ton of blood. And when we finally get to the hospital, I walk in with my pants kind of not around my ankles, but they're down to where it's where my pants end is where my boxers start. And the security there was not having. He was you got to get your pants on. And I was dude, these pants are not coming up. Get me a blanket or something. So the guy goes and grabs me some random blanket. I wrap myself in it and I'm sitting in the waiting room and I'm dripping blood everywhere and it's really not sanitary. But this happened in 2008, so I guess people cared a little bit less about it back then. I don't know. And I was there for what felt like a very long time, but I honestly have no idea how long it actually was. They finally call me back. And there's a little side note, by the way, when we took the blanket off of me, the blood stain that I left on the blanket was a perfect maple leaf. It is what I would imagine if Canada took over the world. It is the symbol that they would use, a maple leaf made of blood. It was so sick and they wouldn't let me keep it. They would let me bleed on their floor, but they wouldn't let me keep the blanket that I bled all over. They threw it away. It's no, it's not sanitary, blah, blah, blah. I definitely had a Linus moment. I was pretty upset about them taking my blanket away. Anyways, so I get called back there. I go back and there's two nurses. And I cannot exaggerate this enough because it is dead spot on, the most stereotypical, attractive, female nurses you could possibly imagine. If you've ever seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the like lady in red, like in a nurse uniform, like both of them were just like super, you know, I was like, of course, like this is the situation. And they're like, okay, so like what happened? And I was just like, oh, like I fell on my skateboard. And they're like, all right, let's see it. And so like I pulled down my pants and I told them that I thought it was my butthole. And I remember the one nurse, like, they like, you know, she has gloves on and they like kind of part my cheeks and she like taps on my butthole like it's a microphone, like she's trying to like check 1 2 it. She taps it and then she goes to like feel under like just this and she sticks a finger in my newly formed gaping hole between my butthole and my ball sack. My balls did get clipped too. My balls swelled up to be huge, black, like baseball size black balls next to each other. They were real gnarly. But the main damage was between my butthole and my ball sack. Now you might be picturing something like, okay, so I have like a cut right there or something like that, right? No. If you ever looked at a brand new skateboard, which is what I was riding at the time, it is pretty blunt, okay? So you need to imagine a blunt piece of wood hitting your taint so hard that it bruises it to the point that it tears and folds inward to where the skin was folded inward on both sides. It was insanely excruciatingly painful, and like obviously everything was bruised, like everything, like up to like halfway up my butt crack was just bruised. Like, I mean, it wrecked me. And so I'm screaming obviously because I just got fingered for the first time, and my buddies in the waiting room so that they could hear me and stuff like that. Like it was like gnarly. You need to stitch me up. So what they do is they have me go wait in a room and they put me on one of those gurney things that they put pregnant women in where their legs are up in the air, and they like left me with like the curtain open. So like here I am like in the middle of the hospital. It was like a pretty crowded hospital, so it was like they had just like sections of the hallway like turned into rooms. So I'm literally just sitting in the middle of the hallway, legs spread Hustler magazine style, not tasteful at all, just gaping out, bleeding, just like looking at me like, oh, that sucks. But anywho, the doctor finally comes in, like looks at like the cut, and he kind of like reverse teabags my ball sack up and like looks around. And I remember like set him down and he walked straight over to the phone, made a quick phone call, and he hung up. Like, I don't know what he said on the phone, but I can imagine what he said, because the second he got off the phone, a nurse comes in. She walks straight over to me and grabs my balls and holds them up in the air so he can sew up underneath of them. Like, that phone call must have literally been like, I need you to pick this dude's balls up, like get in here real quick. And the funny thing about it is I looked at the bill and it had like the nursing bill separate, and I paid her $500 to hold my balls up for 10 minutes, which I'm pretty sure is way above the street rates for such a thing. He stitches me up. Yes, that sucks. My skin was very tender. The needle that they put in to numb it really sucked because he had to like poke it right where, like, you know, right near where the gash was, which is a really graphic word to say for that injury. And I'm just realizing that gash is like something that they would use to describe a vagina in like porno mags in like the 90s and 80s. So maybe that's what I'll refer to it as for the rest of the video, my gash. Never mind. I don't like the way that sounds. That's just too graphic. And they're like, okay, we got to make sure there's no internal damage. So they sent me to get a CAT scan. I remember they told me, they were like, yeah, like it's going to feel like you got to pee. When you go through this machine, it's gonna feel real warm. And I was like, well, what if I do have to pee? And I did have to pee. And like they gave me a little thing to pee in, and I peed blood, and it was real scary, and I was freaking out, and I was real exhausted. And then I go through the CAT scan, and like that whole section's kind of a blur. I remember like still trying to be like a little bit peppy, even though I was like so exhausted. Like I was still trying to be like a little bit cheerful, just because the situation was like so crappy. And like I've been in this hospital at this point in time for like 4 hours, and like I've been talking to these doctors, and I'm just trying to keep the energy a little bit up. And oh, by the way, a little quick side note, forgot to mention this. This was on my birthday. This was my 22nd birthday. Then they take me into the waiting room. I sit there, the doctor talks to me for a little bit, and he's talking about painkillers and what he's gonna give me for medicine and all this stuff like that. And like at this point in time, I mean, I was trying my hardest to just stay like as positive as possible. And I am just both physically and mentally exhausted. I'm drenched in sweat. You know, and they kept me in the same bed the whole time, so it's just like stained with blood. It literally looks like someone was decapitated. It is insane on how much blood can leak out of your taint. You have no idea. And he's like telling me all this information that I'm trying to remember, and I'm just like, oh, I just need to get out of here. This is awful. And he's like, all right, I'm gonna go get your paperwork, and then we're gonna dismiss you. So he walks out. Keep in mind, I'm just like out of it. I am super exhausted. And I go to fart, and I fucking shit in the middle of this blood-soaked circle I shit this little dollop of diarrhea dead center in the middle. Because I'm just like out of it. I'm dead. You know what I mean? I'm completely exhausted. And I trusted a fart, and I shouldn't have. And I remember I just like stood up. I turned around. I looked at it. And I just walked out of there. I just left. I didn't wait for no papers. I didn't get any medicine. I was like, I can't be here anymore. It looks like a bullseye with poop in the middle. I just couldn't do it. And so I ended up leaving. And that's when I learned about debt collectors. And if you don't know about debt collectors, even though I didn't sign anything, and I think at the time, like I didn't show them ID or anything, I had left it at my place that I was staying. Also, I was like, out of state. This was in California, and I was living in Maryland at the time. It took them about 2 months to track me down until I got a phone call. And they were like, yeah, like, you owe, it was like, I didn't have insurance at the time, so it was like $9,000 or something like that. And I was like, yeah, like I don't have the money. At this point in time, I was living off of skateboard contests, and like I didn't have $9,000 just laying around. So, and then they kept hitting me up over like a course of a decent amount of time. And what happens is like they'll sell your debt to someone else, and then someone else will come at you. Like they'll be like, okay, this guy owes us $9,000. You give us $6,000 and you can charge him $8,000. And that just keeps happening. And then the amount you owe gets less and less from each debt person to each debt person. The issue is it absolutely destroys your credit, will make it very difficult for you to get an apartment or a bunch of other things. Luckily, this happened early enough in my life that I could correct it later on over like, just being an adult and making like adult purchases. But I remember receiving the phone call, like it was like 2 years later. Someone was like, okay, you owe us $400. And I was like, yep, I'll pay it. And I paid the $400. And that was the end of it. That was the story of me just gashing myself wide open. Felt absolutely terrible. It is exactly as painful as you would imagine it. Ironically, the aftermath of it, the chronic kidney stones and bladder stones that I do think is linked to that injury, is way more painful and way more terrible. I would not wish the pain of a bladder stone surgery and the pee that you have right after it on anyone. Mine have been as big as a gumball, so you have to go in and chop it up with lasers and stuff. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this story time. It's not my favorite story to tell, but it's a story to tell. And I actually have quite a few stories like this that I've happened to go through some pretty heinous things that have happened to me that ended up being almost as funny as it was painful or terrible. So if you like this video and you want to hear some more stories, let me know. Go check out some of the other videos that I have. I'll also link my other channel in the bio if you have any interest in skateboarding or pro skaters or anything of that sort, because that's what my other channel's about.